earliest recollections of the Allniters was Kent Street, going through several musicians, trying to find people that even could play music, let alone could play ska, was very difficult. Yeah, it all just came out of the Sussex, and 6 months of trying musicians and, you know, trying different situations, and we finally had a band.
Take it away, Denny!
Come on, everybody now, just like this.
This is the story of 9 lads and a girl who became the most misunderstood act in the Australian music industry. During a decade dominated by denim, they donned porkpie hats, braces and Doc Marten boots, and began developing their very own brand of new wave ska. They became one of the hardest touring acts in the country, gravitated to by stark raving mods, punks, skinheads, and rude boys and girls, all fascinated by a band clearly spearheading a new movement. They reached #1 in the indie charts and then exploded onto the mainstream national charts. They toured with the biggest names of the day: The Clash, Madness, UB40, and many more, and broke house records from Sydney to Perth and back again. But just as black is to white, they were worlds apart from anything else on the hard-edged playing field, and for that, they dearly paid. They called themselves the Allniters. And 34 years on, after being shunned by their peers, after pioneering a scene that continues to thrive, after imploding, fighting, kissing and making up, this seminal lot are here to share their story of a rude awakening.
When people say why do bands break up, I say, why do they stay together? It's like being, this was like being married to 11 people. I mean, how the hell could you stay together?
We were on the road in a shitty van with spew, and we were having fun, and crowds liked us.
We'd get pissed, go to the gig, get pissed again, set up, then get pissed again, perform, get pissed while performing, dry it all out because we were so sweaty and hot.
Things were really terrific and going off, and
then go to Arthur's and get pissed again.
we were all mad as a hat, cut snakes and...
Touring, playing gigs was what we were about.
Entertain, second to none.
And the Allniters were fun and live, like vibrantly live.
And that extended from the stage down into the audience. And consequently, we had a great time.
Those are special memories, you know, that you just look back and think, yeah, I'm glad I was there at that night.
And watching something like that progress and grow was really, really special to me. And great time, excellent time.
Any musician could probably pinpoint the moment that turned them on and made them want to do what they do as a musician. And I guess for me it was the Allniters, so they are to blame.
Fantastic days.
This is insane. I can't believe this level of success so quickly.
Tell me a little bit about the band. I mean, what are the Allniters all about?
The Allniters are all about fun. They're a modern dance band, basically.
It's music for your feet, not for your head. It's just to dance to. It's all fun.
So the kind of music you play, I mean, if you can't, it's not really reggae, is it? It's like ska music.
Ska is a very commercial form of reggae music, yes.
It came before reggae. It's the faster sort of, more bouncier.
It's West Indian.
You know, it's changed around here. I don't recognise anything. Like, the roads have changed, the buildings are bigger.
And so are we, Brett.
That's true, Pete. That's true.
But do you remember this? This is where the Allniters began.
What, a Korean restaurant?
No. This was the Sussex Hotel. We used to come down here and park the scooters along the street, go into the bar. The bands used to play in the pit, which was the storeroom behind the bar, under the ground on the corner there.
Unless you told me that this was the Sussex Hotel, I would just never have recognised it. Mainly because the building's brand new.
Yeah.
But also this street.
There's not even a street
sign
on the corner there.
It says Sussex Street, you know.
It's lucky we've got good memories. And I do have good memories of this place because it was a very important part of Sydney's pop rock cultural scene. So many bands came out of here.
I have so many great memories of this place. You know.
Name one.
I can't remember.
No, I do remember. The stage was so small, we literally had to stand on a milk crate, and the PA was just like a fold-back speaker, which we hired from Hilton Fat, who was Jet Fat's brother.
That's right.
Even the cockroaches played in the pit.
Yeah, I remember all of that. And I remember there was one light. We had one light for the light show.
Yes, and we stole that from a red light district. It was red.
Listen, while we're here, let's bugger off and go and have
back to the pits,
something to eat.
Where we belong.
Most important aspect of the scene at that time were that the guys in the bands were from the crowd. So it was the sets were 5 guys who got up out of the crowd and played, and that was what provided that affinity between the audience and the bands, and why there was such passion between the crowd and their heroes on stage. And the same thing happened when the Allniters, we heard that this band was going to be, created, and I remember the first gig at the Sussex in the famous pit with the fantastic light show of one red globe hanging behind them, and we had the same feeling that these were mods who were now playing in a band. Okay, there was a few extra guys who you probably would never have classified them as mods, but they were part of the scene, the greater scene. So there was a great affinity towards the Allniters. This is a fun band. God, how many people were on stage? It was just, it was crazy. Not all of them played their instruments really, really well at the start, but it was a fun experience. And just like that first sets gigs that we saw way back in '79, the Allniters played the set twice to pad it out, and it was fun.
76, 77, 1978, the late 70s, there was a pretty thriving underground scene based around basically punk rock and new wave music. Sometime around 1979, a whole bunch of other influences came in, and in Sydney the scene fragmented into half a dozen different scenes. So you had your Detroit Radio Birdman scene, you had the sort of surf music, Surfside Six, Flaming Hands, indie, American pop. Obviously there was a ska scene, there was a skinhead scene, and there was a post-punk, electronic, Severed Heads, those kind of things. And all those scenes actually came out of the original melting pot that was late 70s punk and new wave, and then that fragmented, and obviously the ska scene came out of that, and a few people from the punk scene ended up in that, and a few people from other areas, disco, fought a war against it, still angry. A few of those people came in as well.
For me, the involvement with the mod scene began as a direct result of being frustrated by the music scene in Sydney in the late 70s. We used to go and see some of the punk bands in the 70s. We'd gone to see bands to dance, to have fun, and then that whole scene got very violent, like fights on the dance floor for absolutely no reason, and we pretty much withdrew from it. And then one of our friends told us about a band playing at a venue in the city, and we ended up talking to these guys, and that was really when we started going back to see bands. Realised that there was a mod scene building up again in England, and then Quadrophenia, the movie, came out, and we set up, as we referred to it, a recruiting station outside Quadrophenia in George Street, and anyone who looked like they were maybe a mod or interested in mod were roped in and given a pamphlet to go down to the Sussex Hotel, and that's how it really kicked off. And then the bands started to naturally just come out of that scene.
I've never had more fun in my life since I've been with the mods. I think it's great.
Why are you into mods? Mod? It's fun. It's a full social thing. You can go out 5 nights a week, stay up till 2:30, crash on a Sunday and have a great time. Plus, it's a band called the Sets that I really do.
Well, the way I got involved in the Sussex Hotel was through a good friend of mine at the time, Stuart Hooper. He was a few years older than me, and we used to go see all the great punk and new wave bands at the Grand Hotel at Broadway back in 1979. And during that year, he went on holidays to Wales in the UK. And when he was there, he experienced the mod explosion, and he saw 100 scooters riding down the streets of Blackpool. When he returned from that holiday, he brought back a whole heap of records and clothes, and for us, perhaps that we thought the punk scene was running out of steam, and we got into it, and we formed a band, and we met another guy called Keith Claringbold, and we really just wanted somewhere to play. And the Sussex Hotel was a small pub in the city. He used to have bands there for, I think it was $1 the entry. And we used to go see a band called the Clerks every Friday, and they asked us to support them one night, and it really went from there. And it built up from there, I guess, just running into like-minded people as the mod scene started to gain momentum in Australia, people that were interested in it. We started to meet, and a lot of those people we met at Quadrophenia when that film was released in '79 or 1980, it might have been by then.
My memories of those early days are a little bit sketchy. What was your earliest memories of the Sussex and the scene?
Yes, I do remember actually going to see Quadrophenia, the movie, at the Hoyts in George Street. And when I came out, I saw a kid on a scooter going down George Street, and I thought, wow, it's real life imitating art. Then I heard that there was a mod revival going on at the Sussex Hotel, so I went along one night, walked in the door, and the first person I saw sitting at the bar was Marty Fabok with his porkpie hat and his duffel coat and his bad manners patch on there and a glass of port. They told me he was trying to start a ska band.
How many times do you reckon Marty left the band?
Well, I think it's more how many times he joined the band. He started it and he kept rejoining.
I think the last time we saw him, he was off to the sandwich shop. He never came back.
I think he's ate his way through a few sandwich shops, but he's still playing. He's in fine form.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to this upcoming tour. The set list's ready.
Yes, it's only the band needs to do a few rehearsals for a change. That'll be good.
Yeah, well, that'll be a change, all right.
Yes, well, we don't want to take the spontaneity out of it.
I got into ska music late '79. I was playing in punk rock bands in New Zealand, and I was getting a bit tired of it because it was becoming quite violent in Auckland, and so I was looking for something else, and I heard that single with Selector on one side and the Specials on the other doing Gangster, and I thought, wow, what's that? And from there I sort of started researching, and then Madness and all that started coming out, and ska bands, so that's where my interest in ska started. A lot of the punk bands in Auckland at the time probably had one reggae song in their set, so that whole punky reggae thing was going on. So I came to Australia. I came over with Daisy Day and Joanne Scott. One day me and Daisy went to see Quadrophenia, and Phil Robinson from the Cockroaches was standing up handing out flyers for the Sussex. So that's what got me to the Sussex. More and more people started coming to the Sussex, and from those people who really from all walks of life, all parts of Sydney, different backgrounds, but the common interest was creating music and doing something creative, and it was fantastic. And I met some of the Allniters in those early days, Peter Travis, Brett Pattinson, Graham Hood and Martin Fabok, and I believe I introduced Martin to Peter, and so maybe it's my fault that the Allniters happened, but only joking.
I found myself at the Sussex because Greg Noyes used to go there, and he suggested I go along there because we had nothing to do and we liked to drink and have fun. And he was a mod, I think, at that stage, yes. So we went there, and there was no Rudies there, so that had to change. So it did. We listened to a lot of rock and roll when we were young, and a lot of blues. And then in the 70s got into a bit of reggae, and then from the reggae came a bit of traditional ska, and from the traditional ska came the Specials' first album, and from the Specials' first album came the influence inspiration to do the Allniters. Because I'd heard the traditional ska before, but I hadn't heard the modern concept of it until the Specials' first album. And then when that came out, that was the key to drive everything.
They were a great band and one of the many bands that came out of there. And what people forget, or may forget, it wasn't just mod bands. It was a real diverse cross-section of music. You had Spy versus Spy, you had pop bands, you had R&B bands, and of course ska bands. But they all started there. And it was magic. It was a tiny pub, and the temperature in the pit, as they called it, where the bands played, must have been pushing 50 degrees. It was just overwhelming, but you know, no one seemed to care. And there was plenty of fluid to cool you down. It was just an awesome atmosphere, and you know, I'll never forget it. And that's really how it began. It just built up from a couple of people into hundreds and hundreds. And that really then went down different roads with the different types of music, and some of those bands went on to a great success.
You said you were leaving, and I just said goodbye. I wish you'd hurry up and go, please don't waste my time. You said you can't remember when we were both good friends. We used to have some good times, and you drive me round the bend.
Okay, the Allniters was started when I was about 20, and before that I did various jobs and played in various bands. The first school band was called Calibre, and that was a lot of fun, a good learning experience. And the band after that was a band called Subversion. They used to do Velvet Underground covers, and I learned a lot from that as well. And then I was a postman at the same time as doing the Allniters, and Mum eventually told me to stop being a postman and just do the music. She obviously knew that 6 o'clock in the morning starts for me wasn't very good. More appropriate time for me to finish the shift than start the shift. So that was about 1980. So from that time on, we just did the Allniters full time for the next, 20-something years, I think. Pretty well non-stop. Oh no, that's right, I quit the band a few times, didn't I? Yeah, and I was working during those stages. That was horrible. Joined the band again, quit the band, joined the band, quit the band, joined the band, and stayed with the band for the rest of it after that.
In '79, I saw Quadrophenia. That was really the turning point for me. Quadrophenia, I just fell in love with. I wanted a scooter, I wanted a parker, I wanted to be in that scene. So I went out and I literally sold my record collection and I bought a scooter, a really beaten up old Lambretta. Got my bike licence and started to ride from the Shire into the city every day to work. Just by chance, one day at a set of traffic lights, a guy pulled up on a scooter next to me and said, "Hey mate, if you love scooters, if you love mod, you should come down to the Sussex." I had no idea where the Sussex was, what the Sussex was. He just invited me down. So the next Friday night, jumped on the scooter from Cronulla and headed into the Sussex Hotel. Pulled up, there were 2 other scooters, so I was number 3. Walked into the bar, there were about 10 guys, 1 girl. They seemed friendly enough. An old lady behind the bar, all the lights were on. But the music was good.
Interesting location, Brett.
Certainly is. The thing that strikes me is that there's no graffiti here.
Yeah, it's a long way from the sand and the sun and the surf of the Sutherland Shire.
Yeah, well, that's where I grew up, and you know, Ted, aka Phil, aka Ted Ayres,
whatever,
and I grew up in the Shire, and we met a guy named Brad Little. Do you remember him?
I remember Brad.
Yeah, he had a scooter. He was one of the first with a scooter. Anyway, he I can't remember how, but we bumped into him, and he said, "Come to the Sussex. It's a happening little scene." I was still suffering from the post-disco trauma, I guess. Still had a bit of a fro, the red fur, yeah.
Yeah, so you were way ahead of your time.
Anyway, we went to the Sussex for the first time, and I always remember meeting Marty, of course. You know.
Of course, Marty makes a lasting impression.
He does, but then there was all these interesting characters. I remember
the faces and the bodies.
The faces and the bodies, like Belinda Green. Talking about
Say
faces
no more.
and bodies. But yeah, you know, Phil Robinson and Steve Detry, Don Hosey.
Oh yes, the ace face himself.
Richard White.
Ah, the Vogue.
The Vogue.
They all had such cool names.
Well, and two, you know, Don's passed away, and so's Richard Vogue. We're still here.
We are.
We are. But I guess then I met Hoodie, you, Marty.
Sounds like the nucleus of a good ska band there.
I think that's how it all came together, didn't it? It just sort of happened naturally.
Yes, you couldn't have planned it.
No, it's pretty amazing, really. But I guess it was the music that brought us all together, really, wasn't it?